On June 12, 1942, a young girl received a diary for her 13th birthday. The girl in receipt of the diary was Anne Frank. Through her writing, Anne Frank would become an icon.
What is an icon? What makes a person an icon? For some, she is the symbol of the Holocaust. For some, she is a source of inspiration. For some, she is a brilliant writer.
Living under religious persecution, Anne Frank's writing gave the world valuable insight into conditions for Jews living in Germany.
She was a symbol of what happened to 1.5 million Jewish children during the Holocaust and their suffering.
Popular around the world, Anne Frank's diary has become a symbol of hope.
It's a remarkable fact that a book has been able to inspire so many people in so many different ways.
There are 1.5 million children murdered, but if you talk about that, people can't imagine. So Anne has become a symbol for all those 1.5 million victims.
Anne was born to a German Jewish family. Her father's family had lived in Frankfurt for 7 generations. They were very culturalized. They were very settled in Frankfurt. 3 years before Anne was born, her sister Margot was born. Anne was born on the 12th of June, 1929. She was a pretty normal girl growing up in a German family. A very normal childhood.
In 1933, the Nazi Party seized power in Germany. Hitler's anti-Semitism meant that Jewish persecution was implemented immediately, and the very normal childhood experience by Anne and thousands of other Jewish children in Germany would be changed forever.
The Nuremberg laws were introduced, and life became increasingly difficult for German Jewish families.
All books of Jewish authors are ordered burned in the public squares. Authors, scientists, artists are driven from Germany. 1,600 have fled to Holland, 12,000 to France.
The Franks chose to move to Holland, and in 1934 arrived in Amsterdam.
Otto knew people in the city and went originally himself to see if he could find work, start a business, which he did.
Anne and Margot both enrolled in Dutch schools and both seemed to adapt well to life in Amsterdam. The Netherlands became their home and a normal life could once again be resumed. Throughout the 1930s, Hitler made several territory gains in Europe, one being the Anschluss in Austria in 1938. Eva Schloss, a child living in Vienna at the time, found herself having to move. They first fled to Belgium before finally settling in Amsterdam, another Jewish family fleeing from persecution.
We moved onto the Merwedeplein, a modern square in Amsterdam. Well, it was actually more a triangle where apartments were on both sides, and there was a big open space where all the local children came to play after school. And one day a little girl came to me and introduced herself, and she said it was Anne Frank. We were 11 when we met. She said her family comes from Germany and I couldn't speak much Dutch yet, so she took me up to her apartment and I met her family.
During this meeting between Eva and Anne on the square of the Merwedeplein, neither would be able to comprehend how their lives were going to be intertwined and their idyllic life in Amsterdam would soon be turned upside down.
Unfortunately, in May 1940, the Germans invaded that country as well.
towns and villages were in flames as the invaders rolled on at a breathless pace. The Nazi machine broke the back of Dutch resistance in 4 days.
After the occupation of the Netherlands in May 1940, life seemed to stay pretty normal and pretty much the same as before.
Life continued, but I must say we were afraid what would happen. And after several weeks and months, the measures against the Jewish population started to bite.
Jews not wanted. Jews keep out. Even in parks, if Jews are allowed at all, special yellow benches are set apart, labeled for Jews.
And then we had to leave our school, and we had to wear a yellow star. And then they started to arrest people, especially young people, male. So it was really very scary to go even out in the street to do your shopping or anything like that. And many, many people disappeared. In 1941, many, many were arrested.
The turmoil and persecution faced by the Jews in Amsterdam was beginning to become unbearable, but it would be a letter sent to all Jewish youths which would decide the fates of both Anne and Eva.
After 2 years, in July 1942, about 10,000 young people got a call-up notice to be deported to Germany to work in German factories. My brother Heinz, who was 16 at the time, and Anne's sister Margot, and many, many others of their friends got this call-up notice. Many parents sent their young people, but they didn't end up in Germany in working in factories. They were sent to Mauthausen and just murdered there. So it was very, very difficult, but nothing, of course, what was going to follow up. The times that my father and Otto Frank and many other parents decided they wouldn't send their children, but we would go into hiding.
Well, they tried to leave the impression that they had to leave for Switzerland, where the family of Anne's father lived.
Otto decided, because where he worked was a warehouse with rooms above.
The annex to the house was pretty much unused, so it was an empty space. These annexes, they are a common feature in Amsterdam.
There were lots of sort of staircases and rooms at the back that could be easily obscured. So he started making plans in 1942 that should there be an eventuality, the family would go into hiding. Now, it came more suddenly than he had anticipated.
Anne Frank and her family entered the hiding place at 263 Prinsengracht on July 6, 1942. A few weeks later, the Van Pels moved in. Herman Van Pels was Otto Frank's business partner. His wife August and their son Peter all joined the Franks in the annex. The last person to enter the annex was Fritz Pfeffer, a dentist from Berlin who emigrated to the Netherlands after the Kristallnacht in 1938. The living conditions in the secret annex were extremely cramped. Anne, having been forced to share a room with Fritz Pfeffer, who in the diary she refers to as Dr. Dussel, would find solace in her writing. Her writing was partly an act of catharsis, as with many teenagers, but it was also spurred on by a radio broadcast that she happened to hear on the BBC World Service.
There was radio broadcast because you were not allowed to listen to the BBC, but people did. Somebody from the Interior Minister, I believe it was, said everybody who can should write a diary about what happened to them during this occupation. It's very important for the future.
When you read the diary, you read all about all these scenes and all her emotions when it comes to her relation with the other people. She loved her father. She had kind of a difficult relationship with her mother. Her relationship with her sister Margot was on and off.
During the course of those 2 years, she also falls in love with Peter, the boy in the secret annex. However, towards the end of the diary, she's outgrown him, and she's concentrating more on her personal philosophy, how difficult it is to have those ideals when everything around her is crumbling.
The Germans made house searches in the apartments because they really wanted to catch every Jew. So we had a hiding place within the hiding place. The people from the resistance came and built hiding places where we could go when they came at night to search for us.
Otto had secured a loyal group of his workforce to aid the Franks in hiding. They were Miep Gies, the office administrator, Jo Kleiman and Victor Kugler, the office managers, and Otto's secretary, Bep Voskiel. The Franks, the Van Pels and Fritz Pfeffer were all getting along with their restricted daily routine when the Dutch police and a Gestapo officer, Karl Silverbauer, entered the office and asked the staff at gunpoint to open the bookcase. They knew from the anonymous tip-off exactly what was going on in the building. They went up to the annex and all were arrested, including 2 of their helpers, Jo Kleiman and Victor Kugler. Miep Gies had managed to evade arrest. She knew that the authorities would soon be coming to clear the annex, so managed to rescue what she could. It was then she found Anne's diary. Knowing that Anne was a budding writer, she placed it safely in her desk drawer. It was there the diary remained, lying dormant, waiting to be reunited with its owner.
We were first sent to Westerbork, which was a holding camp, and we were immediately put on a list and transported to Auschwitz.
It was in Auschwitz where Eva and her family would be kept for the duration of the war. After their capture in June, the Frank family would follow Eva's route to Westerbork work camp in the Netherlands.
Anne and Margot were transported to Bergen-Belsen. There was no food, it was pretty much abandoned. It was riddled with disease. So you imagine the combination of despair, of cold, of starvation and disease. It was pretty impossible to survive Bergen-Belsen.
Anne and Margot's health deteriorated rapidly in Bergen-Belsen. In March 1945, a typhus epidemic swept through the camp, and although there are no records, it is this which is believed to have killed firstly Margot Frank and then 2 days later, Anne Frank. The real tragedy lies in that just a few weeks later, Bergen-Belsen would be liberated by British forces. At this point, no one could have guessed the future impact of Anne Frank's legacy. From the 8 people who were in hiding in the annex of 263 Prinsengracht, only one survived. That was Otto Frank.
When he came first to tell us that the girls had died, he looked as if he couldn't carry on with his life.
He went back to tell Miep, and Miep went to the drawer where she'd been keeping Anne's diary, and she said to him, "Here you are, Mr. Frank. Here is the legacy of your daughter."
She went into the secret annex after those who were in hiding were captured and taken away from here, and she managed to save lots of the diary papers.
Miep knew that within a couple of days everything would be taken away.
She kept them with her until after the war, and when she learned that Anne would not return, she gave these papers, notebook sheets, to Anne's father.
Miep hadn't read it. It was Anne's private diary. Otto went into another room and quietly read it. He came out ashen-faced and said, Me, I never knew my daughter.
One of the first people to hear Otto read extracts from Anne's diary was Eva.
A few days later, he came with the diary and opened the packet very carefully, and he read a few sentences, but he always burst into tears. He couldn't read it in one go, and it took him 3 weeks to read it. He told us that.
He agonized for a long time as to whether he should publish it. She wanted to be a writer, she wanted to be a published writer. But at the end of the day, it was a private diary. And she said things that were maybe not suitable for other people to read. She wasn't very nice about her mother.
Everybody told him he should publish it, and especially a history professor told him he has to publish it, it's his duty.
Eva Schloss, with her mother, would witness firsthand the rise of what would become one of the world's most regarded works of literature.
I knew they liked each other, Otto and my mother, but I had no idea how close they were.
Otto and Elfriede grew closer and closer over time and would marry in 1953. Eva received the news whilst living in London.
He said, well, your mother and me have fallen in love. And they were married for 27 years, so longer than they were married to their first spouses.
He showed it to a few people and gauged their opinions. And then a professor called Jan Romein from the University of Amsterdam read it. And he published an article in the newspaper Het Parool saying that everybody should read this diary.
It was this article that led to the first publication on June 25th, 1947.
When the diary was first published, it had not such a great impact. It was very much a book like many other books that dealt with the occupation of the Netherlands.
When the Dutch book came out, he gave it to everybody who had known Anne. He was very, very generous, of course, with it. He wanted everybody to read it.
And it was published in a time that people were focused on the future. They wanted to forget about what happened here between 1940 and 1945. They had suffered a lot, and people wanted to forget about it.
In Europe, people didn't really want to talk about what had happened, about Auschwitz or anything like that. But of course, the diary is not really about this.
So only after the mid-50s, the diary became a great success.
It came out then in 1952 in America. Great difficulty finding an American publisher as well, because people said, well, who is interested in a diary of a young girl?
The publisher who picked it up in America was Doubleday. They had taken a risk as no one really knew whether there would be any interest in it. It took an article by the novelist Meyer Levine to really popularize the book.
Meyer Levine became a friend of Otto and who loved the diary. He wrote a big article in the New York Times, how wonderful it was, and it became an immediate bestseller in America.
The stage play was dramatized by Francis Goodrich and Albert Hackett, and opened in the Court Theatre on Broadway on October 5th, 1955. Anne was played by Susan Strasberg. The production grew and grew in popularity, which was helped in part by the attendance of many Hollywood stars of the time. Eva witnessed its instant success.
The play was a great success in New York first, and in London, then it was translated, it was in Germany. Then a film was being made.
The film was released in 1959 to great critical and commercial acclaim. It was directed by George Stevens, and the screenplay was written also by Goodrich and Hackett. The lead of Anne Frank was played by Millie Perkins. However, it was Shelley Winters who won an Academy Award for her portrayal of August van Pels. The world wanted to know more about Anne Frank, and Otto was eager to tell her story and continue to spread her philosophy.
Many Americans came to Amsterdam and always knocked on the door of the house and wanted to see where Anne had been hiding.
It was considered a great idea to think about preserving that hiding place but not as a museum. Otto's vision was to see Anne's legacy as one of bringing people together.
The foundation goes back to 1957 in order to purchase the house and to open it to the public, so it took 3 years to prepare it.
What he did invest his time and energy bringing together people from around the world for international student conferences.
The Anne Frank House was first a study group for young people. People from all over the world came together and they had conferences and to talk about what they can do to change the world.
The basic feature of this house is its emptiness, which was the deliberate decision of Otto Frank that this place should remain empty. It represents the absence of Anne Frank. We have her diary as a kind of silent messenger of someone who is not there anymore, and who's not there anymore because of what has been done to her.
So we have to explain to young people how dangerous it is if we are prejudiced against other human beings.
In preserving the memory of his daughter and also the act of persecution inflicted on her, Otto, through single-minded determination, managed to elevate Anne Frank from a young, talented writer, the victim of a terrible chain of events, to become not just a face, but the symbol of the Holocaust. Behind the global popularity of her story is the diary of a young girl, an individual with her own aspirations and ideas, who happened to be caught in extraordinarily tragic circumstances.